Imagine holding a hollow tube of stone in your hands. It stands nearly as tall as a Starbucks grande cup. Its walls are so impossibly thin that light passes directly through them, revealing the natural grain of the material within like a living lampshade. The rim tapers to a sharp beveled edge, barely a millimeter thick, thinner than a butter knife. The entire surface is flawlessly smooth, perfectly polished, geometrically precise. Now imagine it was made over 5,000 years ago, with no metal tools, by people in the Stone Age. That object exists. A few dozens of them have been excavated from elite burial sites across northeast China. And the question of how they were made and what they actually were turns out to be one of the most fascinating and underappreciated stories in the entire history of human craftsmanship. Hi guys, today I'll discuss these mysterious thin jade tubes. What are these things? The artifacts in question come from the Hongshan culture, a sophisticated Neolithic civilization that flourished in northeast China roughly 5,000 to 6,500 years ago, thousands of years before the Chinese Bronze Age, and thousands of years before writing and any metal tools touched Chinese soil. They are called horsehoof jades, and the name comes from their distinctive silhouette. Each one is a hollow oval tube, open at both ends. The base is flat and slightly smaller, with a straight circular mouth. The top is larger and dramatically slanted, cut at a sharp oblique angle, sometimes as steep as 35 degrees, which gives the upper rim that characteristic curved shape resembling the profile of a horse's hoof. Considering their thinness, their dimensions are substantial. Most stand between 10 and 18 centimeters tall, roughly 4 to 7 inches. The oval cross-section spans 5 to 10 centimeters at its widest point, about the diameter of a water bottle. These are not tiny beads or small pendants. They are significant, purposeful objects with real physical presence. And yet despite their size, they are extraordinarily, almost inexplicably thin. Here is the detail that stops material scientists in their tracks. The walls of these jade tubes average between 3 and 8 millimeters in thickness along the main body, but toward the slanted upper rim, the most structurally vulnerable part of the entire object, the craftsman ground the stone down to between 1 and 2 millimeters. At that thickness, the knife becomes semi-translucent. Hold one of these tubes up to a light source, and the stone glows, revealing its internal fibrous texture like light through frosted glass. To put that in physical terms, the cutting edge of these items is approximately the thickness of a credit card, made from stone, ground to that dimension 5 to 6,000 years ago, without metal tools of any kind. The material itself makes this even more remarkable. Neolithic jade in China is primarily knifeite, a stone with a hardness of 6 to 6.5 on the Mohs scale, comparable to granite in hardness, and even tougher in terms of fracture resistance due to its densely interwoven fibrous internal structure. Despite knifeite being renowned as one of the toughest minerals, grinding a knifeite wall 1 millimeter too aggressively can result in shattering the entire piece. Months of work destroyed in an instant, with no recovery possible. That Hongshan craftsman achieved its thinness consistently across many individual objects is definitely an underappreciated technical achievement in prehistoric history, and it demands a sound explanation. Before addressing the how, the what deserves examination, because the proposed use of these artifacts clarifies their technical details. At first glance, the suggestions are varied. Some researchers proposed arm guards, but the oval width is too restrictive for comfortable wear on most arms. The sharp slanted rim would create an injury risk for the wearer, and critically, there are two small holes drilled at equidistant points along the base of each tube that arm guard use cannot account for. Those two tiny paired holes are the key to understanding everything. Excavation reports from the Newholland Hongshan Culture Site, one of the most significant Neolithic archaeological complexes ever discovered in China, show a consistent and telling pattern. Horse-hoof jade artifacts appear almost exclusively in the central main tombs, high-status burials, and within most of those burials, they're found in one specific location, positioned directly beneath the skull of the male occupant. The emerging consensus, supported by burial position evidence across multiple excavation sites, is that these objects, or jade crowns, the oldest examples of jade hair ornaments yet discovered in China. The deceased worn them in life as status symbols of the highest order, and was buried with them in death, positioned exactly where they would have sat in life, cradling the skull where a topknot would be tied. The functional mechanism reconstructed from the evidence is elegant. The hair was gathered upward, passed through the hollow tube from below, and secured by a pin or cord threaded through those two small equidistant holes at the base. The slanted top, the distinctive horse-hoof rim, faced forward or upward, creating a dramatic angular silhouette above the wearer's head. And now the extreme thinness makes complete practical sense. A solid knife-right tube of those dimensions would weigh somewhere between 1 to 1.6 kilograms, about 2 to 3.5 pounds of stone balanced on top of the head. The craftsman hollowed the walls as thin as the material could physically tolerate, particularly to reduce their weight to something wearable. Every fraction of a millimeter removed from those walls was a deliberate engineering decision, not only an aesthetic choice, though the aesthetic dimension was real too. In Neolithic ritual cultures across ancient China, jade's translucency was considered a direct expression of the stone's spiritual purity. An artifact thin enough for light to pass through was not just lighter, it was holier. These objects are more than beautiful artifacts. They may represent the origin point of one of ancient China's most enduring cultural traditions. Centuries later, during the Bronze Age, Zhou dynasty around 1100 BC, records documented a coming-of-age ceremony called guanli, in which a young man reaching the age of 20 received his first formal hair crown called a guan. The ceremony was presided over by his father or a designated guest of honor, who would place a crown on the young man's head, symbolizing civic responsibilities, the duty to serve the country and the right to participate in government and rituals. Wearing a guan was not universal. Commoners wore simple wrapped fabric cloth. The rigid formal hair crown was strictly reserved for royalties, aristocrats, and those in positions of civic authority. It was a visible daily declaration of status, immediately legible to everyone who saw it. The Hongshan horse-hoof jades, found exclusively in elite male burials, positioned beneath the skull, 2,000 years before the Zhou dynasty formalized the tradition in writing, suggest that this entire cultural complex, the male hair crown as a symbol of status, authority, and ritual identity, may have roots stretching back to the very dawn of Chinese civilization and possibly beyond.
So, how were they actually made? This is where the story shifts from cultural mystery to forensic archaeology, and where the answer is simultaneously more ingenious and more labor-intensive than almost anyone expects.
The clue comes from the interior surface of some articles, and from similar marks found on Liangzhu B discs of a later Neolithic culture. Gently curved, shallow concave dented markings line the inside walls. Not random scratches, but consistent, patterned traces of a specific manufacturing process. They are cord saw marks. The Hongshan craftsman cut a knife right, not with rigid tools, but with a flexible string or cord, likely plant fiber, sinew, or similar organic material, drawn back and forth across the stone surface in a continuous sawing motion. The cord itself was not a cutting agent. It was a delivery mechanism, charged with a slurry of hard mineral abrasive, water mixed with quartz sand, garnet, and conundrum, all of which rank harder than knife-ride on the Mohs scale. The moving cord carried those abrasive particles against the stone surface with each pass, gradually wearing via friction through material that no plant fiber could scratch on its own. Some unfinished hoofs tell the story of their production. First, the stone was rough-shaped. Then a small hole was drilled through. The worker thread a cord in and saw off the center cord based on a guideline. The curved marks left by this process are a direct physical consequence of the cord's flexibility. Unlike a rigid saw blade that cuts in a straight line, a flexible cord naturally bows slightly under tension, leaving a subtle curved groove rather than a flat one. Those curved marks, preserved inside jade objects for 5,000 years, are the fingerprints of the craftsmen who made them. Ancient Chinese jade workers named this abrasive material jade cutting sand, and it was used across multiple Neolithic cultures. Modern experimental archaeology has confirmed the process entirely. Researchers use string saws, stone drill bits, and abrasive slurries have produced tool marks on knife-rite that are indistinguishable from those on genuine Neolithic artifacts. The drilling of those two small paired holes at the base followed a similar principle. Hollow bamboo or stone drill bits rotating against abrasive slurry, grinding circular channels through the knife-rite with patience rather than blunt force. Ancient Chinese tradition described jade working in 4 sequential verbs: cutting, grinding, carving, and polishing. The flawlessly smooth, semi-translucent, millimeter-thin walls of the finished horsehoof jade are the cumulative result of all 4, likely requiring months of careful, continuous labor on a single object. So, are these out-of-place artifacts? Evidence of a lost technology or civilization more advanced than we acknowledge? Honestly, no. And the reason they're not is almost more impressive than if they were. What the horsehoof jades represent is something rarer and more humbling than advanced technology. They are the physical record of what human beings can achieve through profound material knowledge, extraordinary patience, and a cultural value system that consider this level of effort not just worthwhile but necessary. An apex example combining both function and form. The Hongshan craftsman understood knife-rite's fibrous ring structure well enough to grind it to a millimeter's thickness without shattering it. They understood abrasive mechanics well enough to cut hard stone with a plant fiber, drills, and mineral sand. They understood human anatomy and weight distribution well enough to engineer a wearable stone crown that secured and balanced comfortably on a living person's head. That is not a mystery that requires a lost civilization to explain. It's a testament to what Neolithic people actually were. Not primitive tool users stumbling toward modernity, but sophisticated, observant, endlessly patient masters of the surrounding materials their world provided them. The horsehoof jade is not evidence of something we have lost. It's evidence of something we have perhaps forgotten to adequately admire, a reminder of who we were and where we came from. What other Neolithic artifacts do you think deserve a closer look? Let me know in the comments. And if this investigation changed how you think about Stone Age craftsmanship, the next video goes even deeper into the jade artifacts that genuinely do raise unanswered questions about prehistoric technology. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe and share with others. You can support me on Patreon or on Buy Me a Coffee. I appreciate your support. This is Curious Being. I'm Tina. Thanks for watching and see you next time.